Because even J.K. Rowling gets unfollowed on Twitter. By who? This is MuggleCast episode 249 for February 12th, 2012. This week's episode of MuggleCast is brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks with more than 100,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature, including fiction, non-fiction, and periodicals. For a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/MuggleCast. Welcome, everyone, to MuggleCast episode 249. Micah, Eric, and I are here this week, and also on the show, first time in a long time, Mikey B.
Hi, everybody.
Hailing from Kentucky, America.
What is that voice, Andrew?
North America. I don't know. It was what you were doing.
Is that what I did? Okay.
Kind of.
I don't know.
Anyway, good to hear from you, Mikey.
I know.
How's life out there? Living the married life?
Yeah, living the married life. It's a little bit different than what I was used to out in California, but it's fun. You know, it's colder out here.
Yeah, you ain't in California no mo.
I know.
But he's got California weather.
Oh, I did for a while, but now it's like 24 degrees. I'm freezing.
I know. Mikey, what is that?
I know. You were in Chicago. Exactly.
Chicago's the same way.
You're only 5 hours from me, so I know.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, we have lots of interesting news to get through, thanks to Dan Radcliffe and this Woman in Black publicity tour. That's, of course, his new horror film, and he's been going all over the United States and United Kingdom promoting it, probably other countries as well. And, you know, now that he's done Harry Potter, he sort of is like, you know, speaking more off the cuff, I feel. Like, these interviews have been insane. Like, every new interview, there's something else to be talking about that, you know, is like surprising or shocking.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Micah. Lead us through it, please.
Well,
like
the first
always.
piece of news that we have here was Dan Radcliffe discussing Twilight as a potential threat to Potter. And he also went into which series he believed was more sexually aggressive. And this just goes to what you were talking about before, Andrew. It seems like he's opening up a bit more. He has freedom of speech now, whereas maybe Warner Brothers put a little bit of a lid on him through all of these films. And it's interesting. He told, I guess, a magazine in London that there was never really any kind of competition between Potter and Twilight. And, you know, I kind of agree with him, though, because I think you have to have, you know, two things that are on equal footing to be competitive. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and it was funny because he kind of called, you know, the whole comparison between, you know, Harry Potter versus Twilight, that whole versus concept in the first place, just odd for people to be doing that. And then, you know, addressing the sexual aggressiveness of things, I think he was more referring to the content of the books, but still very funny. It's always interesting to hear Dan, who's so, of course, attached to Harry Potter, talk about other fandoms.
Well, I like that he said he was Team Edward because he's friends with Robert Pattinson. So yeah. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
they're two book series. That's the common thread between the two of them.
Yeah, you really can't compare it. I mean, there's no point in comparing, and people like to say, oh, one's better than the other, but of course, listeners of this podcast will probably say Harry Potter is better. But it's just silly, you know? It's all entertainment. It's all the same trip.
Yeah, you know, one's got wizards, one's got vampires. They again,
sparkly vampires.
You're right. You know, I can't. The only thing I can compare is Wizards of Waverly Place had wizards and vampires, so that might be the common thread between the two of them. I watch a lot of Disney Channel. You guys know that, so I had to bring that in.
Wasn't it? I saw a graphic recently saying that Disney created a better love story in 7 minutes with Up than Twilight did an entire series.
Books. Yeah.
Well, not a whole lot of things can top Up. That
was an awesome
7 minutes.
movie.
Yeah, Up was phenomenal.
Really,
so
anyway, what other shocking statements did Radcliffe make?
Well, he also said that Potter Oscar snub was snobbery. So he's really laying it all out there, and he went on to say, "I don't think the Oscars like commercial films or kids' films, unless they're directed by Martin Scorsese. I was watching Hugo the other day and going, why is this nominated and we're not? I was slightly miffed. There's a certain amount of snobbery."
It's so funny to me that he would put down Hugo, which has gotten very, very, very good reviews. I haven't seen it, but I've heard good things.
Did it
I don't know
top
that
Deathly Hallows Part 2 97% on Rotten Tomatoes?
96%.
Oh,
Oh, 96. Look at that. Well, I think I haven't seen Hugo. I do want to, but I think what people are misreading that quote. You know, where he says, "Why is this nominated?" He says, "Why is this nominated and we are not?" You know, is kind of the second half of that.
Oh, that's true. That's
more
true.
important because I think what he's saying is that Hugo and Potter are very similar, which based on the what I read about Hugo, it's not. But when I first saw the trailer for Hugo, it looked exactly like a Harry Potter film.
Yeah, it did have that feeling. And maybe what he also meant was that there up to 10 films could have been nominated for Best Picture, and only 9 were nominated.
That was the most shocking thing. We didn't even cover that because before, on our last show, the announcements hadn't come yet. It was like the day before the announcements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 9 categories for 9 nominees for Best Movie this year instead of the
When he says commercial films, though, is he referring to Potter, or when he says kids' films, is he referring to Potter? Because I would consider at least the latter half of the Potter films to be kids' films.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't, but would critics?
It's a children's story. I would say that's what he can consider it. At the same time, I think commercial films, when you look at all the films that are Best Picture, none of them made nearly what Harry Potter did, But again, it's a huge franchise. So.
Well, we'll discuss the Oscars more in a little bit. We have a main discussion on it.
I know.
So.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Before we continue with today's news, we'd like to remind everybody that this week's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks with more than 100,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature and featuring audio versions of many New York Times bestsellers. For listeners of MuggleCast, Audible is offering a free audiobook to give you a chance to try out their great service. One audiobook to consider is The Red Pyramid, The Kane Chronicles, Book 1 by Rick Riordan. You probably know Rick because of his great series Percy Jackson and the Olympians. But this is an entirely new series. One Audible listener said it is a marvelous listen. The book follows Egyptian gods that are on the loose, and at the heart of the story, a brother and sister. Faster paced than the Jackson series in some regards, this one excels from 2 excellent voice actors, each playing one of the main characters. Although targeted for early teens, it is still an adventure any lover of the genre will enjoy. And we know all MuggleCast listeners love this genre. So, for a free audiobook such as The Red Pyramid, visit audiblepodcast.com/MuggleCast. That's audiblepodcast.com/MuggleCast.
Well, one of the other things that Dan was asked about was if the Potter films were to be remade, what character would he want to play? And not surprisingly, he said he'd want to play James Potter. Not a very exciting choice.
No, but he selected it for that reason. It's because it wouldn't require much work of him.
See, if he was going to come back to Harry Potter films, they were making him, I'd want him to play Hagrid. I think it would be fun. I think it would be fun. But see, come on, they could do amazing things in post. Come on, wouldn't Dan Radcliffe being Hagrid just be fun for fans?
Not as cool as it would to see him as Snape.
But see, Hagrid is just a lovable character. Snape, I still have a hard time loving Snape.
No, me too, which is why it would be really cool if he were this dark, I don't know, maybe in 15, 25 years, something like that.
Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because I wonder how the people who are behind The Woman in Black feel about the fact that Dan Radcliffe is putting out all of this material related to Potter when he should be promoting that film, or do you guys think that it kind of lends to the promotion of the film anyway? Because he's saying some pretty interesting stuff here that we've never heard before.
It's lending to the film.
He's showing up at the places. Whenever they talk about promoting a film, it just means appearing in interviews, and when they get introduced, like on Letterman, appearing to talk about his new, film Woman in Black is Dan Radcliffe. But then when you get to the interview part, they can talk about anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter.
And people know what they want, but people want to hear talk about Potter.
And at the same time, it's Dan Radcliffe. He is Harry Potter. So here's what happens is if they can bring in a quarter of the Harry Potter fandom in to see Women in Black, that movie does well. So,
yeah.
So they're milking, it's kind of like taking the best things that Dan Radcliffe did and putting it in this film. So it's like, hey, come on, let's get him in here.
How often do you think he gets asked, oh, are you sad Harry Potter's over? Or how often do you think, if you had to divide the questions that people ask Dan Radcliffe these days, how many do you think have to do with Harry Potter and how many do you think don't? So I think just in general, there's this, people still want to talk about it, and I think he's being forced to kind of,
But he knows it's good, though, because if he does say these surprising, interesting things, then it makes for a good headline. Then people read the article, and then at the end they see Dan Radcliffe is in The Woman in Black in theaters now.
He's definitely able to. Yeah, he's definitely able to open up about Potter now a little bit more. It's it's been some time,
which is good.
It's always a good thing.
And then, like, a little side note to that story, he also said he would be Harry Potter again. So he's kind of contradicting himself. And I would play Harry Potter again comment came out before the James Potter comment.
Well, it's just headline of the day, whatever fits with how he's feeling, I guess.
Yeah, but it makes you think, like, what... I mean, is he saying that because he knows he has some theme park work coming up, or what?
Get your picture taken with the real Harry Potter.
Book 9.
No.
I mean, I don't mean that. I mean, like, new video stuff for the upcoming theme park expansion or whatever.
Gosh, yeah. I wonder, huh?
So maybe he's just playing to say if he said, I will never play Harry Potter again, that probably wouldn't go well when we knew he had to go film.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Andrew, because there was a time he thought about never playing Harry Potter again.
Gasp.
He told
Man, he just really can't make up his mind, can he?
He told the fan carpet that, quote, there was a time after the third film when I thought about quitting. It was only for a second, but I thought if I do the fourth, I'll have to do them all. And that seemed quite daunting. If I was going to leave, that would have been the perfect time because it would have given whoever came in to play Harry enough films to establish himself properly. It wouldn't have totally dumped him in the shitter, I guess is what he meant to say. But then I started thinking, oh, am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay. What other good parts are there for 15-year-olds? None.
Yeah, and my feeling on this is, okay, he considered it. Let's say he actually decided, yeah, I'm going to leave Harry Potter. First of all, very stupid decision. Second of all, WB wouldn't have let him go. They would have just kept throwing money at him until there was an offer that he would have accepted. You can't get rid of your lead character halfway through the series. I
feel like, but we had heard those news stories. Even we reported on those stories even during the first days of MuggleCast. Wasn't it like for movie 5 or movie 6? We weren't even sure because they didn't have contracts. Yeah, they never had contracts all the way through.
Up until movie 5.
Up until movie 5.
Yeah, and then I remember there was a big press release about how Warner Brothers signs the trio on for all the remaining Harry Potter films.
Right. So up until movie 5, yeah, I remember that being a big deal. So it was interesting to me reading this story because Dan said as early as, before movie 4, he considered, or at least, thought, it came to his head about possibly leaving. So that's interesting.
Yep. And another piece of information that came out probably a couple of months ago was that Dan Radcliffe had a pretty bad drinking problem. But what we found out more recently was that he was drunk, night before going into film Harry Potter. So, I mean, this is something that is dicey to talk about. It kind of falls under that tabloid label almost, but yeah, I guess it's still news.
This story upsets me. This is the one where I'm like, okay, Dan, talking about this is not going to serve any good purpose. Like, it's not going to help you to talk about, hey, go back and view all these movies. I'm going to point out scenes where I'm dead in the eyes, and that's because I had been drinking the night before and was still drinking or still drunk when I arrived on set. Okay, that to me hurts the film, and it hurts his, how people view him. On one hand, it's good that he's being open about it.
Yeah,
but
he's not afraid to talk about it.
He's not afraid to talk about it. Okay, but like, what was the context? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, the information was revealed, like I said, months ago, where he was very public about the fact that he had a drinking problem. And he said it was due to his addictive personality. And he felt that this is something that would have happened whether or not he was a part of the films from the beginning. And so, I don't know. I mean, I just think that it's something that he had to combat in his life. And
if anything, it's, kind of him showing that he's overcome this drinking addiction. Yeah. Although I will say that I think the interviewer, like I'm looking at right now, the in context, it's really the person that's kind of baiting him at it. It says, you're only 22. Don't most people in their early 20s drink too much? And he's like, and then he goes on and said it's because of his addictive personality. So he admits he was at fault here. But then he also says he can honestly say he never drank at work on Harry Potter. So he didn't drink while doing Harry Potter. But he went into work still drunk. I mean, he had drunk the night before, and that's being honest. He's not trying to say that, I had a drinking problem, but I can honestly say at work, I try to stay as professional. And then they go, you mean Harry Potter had a hangover? And he's like, yeah, if he went to work drunk, he knows where he was. Probably, I dare someone to point to certain scenes and say that that's when he was drunk. He might see it, but it's because this was a hard time for him. It's like anyone dealing with addiction. So I think that's being taken out of context, and it's good. It's a good tagline. Harry Potter was drunk at work.
Yeah.
Okay. I misread this. Yeah, Mikey. Okay. I see it now, and having read the interview now, or the part of it that's quoted from Heat World, now I see it, and you're right. I think the fact that he can see those scenes doesn't mean that anybody else can. It just means that kind of thing, it'll always be there, kind of.
To haunt him. It's going to haunt him.
Yeah. In a way, yeah.
And it's good that he feels confident enough, too, to speak about it now. That's the other thing. Like, he's not particularly ashamed by it because he has moved past it and, he accepted that time of his life. But very interesting. And this is going to sound kind of bad, but I was considering, because he says in the interview he can point out scenes where he looks dead in the eyes. And I was thinking of, watching Half-Blood Prince and making a list, the top 10 scenes Dan Radcliffe is definitely drunk or hungover in. Yeah, but then that would have been in bad taste.
Yeah, well, it would have been, but I think too, the thing is, I don't think it was that obvious,
me neither.
Yeah, but if we go back and look, of course, then we
it's
might
hindsight.
See something.
In hindsight, you can see things. And now that I know this, I might be watching Deathly Hallows Part 2 again and rewatching
Half-Blood Prince.
Or Half-Blood Prince. Sorry, I'm where it's at. But going back and looking for specific stuff like this. But you know what? Am I really going to notice it? Probably not.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of those things where yourself so well you can tell when you're, buzzed or whatever, but I don't think anybody else, because the other thing is the director, the movies went through, whatever you see on the finished product went through 100 other eyes, and if there was a problem with it, if Dan was obviously one way or another, it wouldn't have made it into the film.
If anything, I think for this right here, he can see it, and I think if anything, we just think that, wow, he was a better actor. He really was sullen from, Dumbledore's death or something like that. If
the bags under his eyes,
the bags under his eyes are real, but
well.
we thought it just, wow, they did great makeup on it.
No, that's
somebody left this comment on Hypable, and I think this about sums it up. She said, "So that's how he did the Felix Felicia scenes."
Wow. Which are the best scenes in any of the movies.
From Caitlin.
But I think it's interesting that we expected all of these kids really to go through the series without having any sort of blemish on them. And really we talked about how insulated they were and how they grew up, really out of the spotlight and kind of maintained those images over time. And now we see a story like this, but I don't think it should shock anybody, right?
No.
This kind of stuff happens all the time. It's just magnified by the fact that he played Harry Potter.
Well, if anything, if anybody was lashing out in rebellion, it was Emma Watson when she cut off all her hair. Finally, I'm free. That was that was what that said. So,
But you're right, Mike. We've always thought about, wow, all these kids have really grown up well, and they all really did. And Dan Radcliffe obviously did grow up really well, and he's a great guy and professionally has a great career ahead of him. But you never know what's happening behind the scenes sometimes.
But that's it's everyone's look. Dan Radcliffe and the trio themselves are kind of put under a microscope because of who they are. But it's the same with anything else. Like, look at Disney. Anything that happens in their parks, Apple, they're huge now, and so everything that they do goes in. It goes everywhere. So like big companies, actors, you see it all the time. TMZ makes a living out of this type of stuff. So.
I don't know that TMZ does anybody I care about. I think now would be a good time to ask, have you guys seen The Woman in Black? Did you guys all see it?
No.
not yet.
No.
What?
Did you, Eric?
What?
Honestly, I'm not that into horror films, and I'm not going to be like following
Scared.
Dan Radcliffe through every film that he does. So,
Okay.
You know
Fine.
did you like it, Eric?
Yeah, I saw it.
See, the thing
You
is,
like it?
I want to see it, but
Yeah, it was good.
yeah,
It was, it was good.
Oh, well said.
that's good.
What else? Well, speaking of that, there's a related story. Well, not really related, but I hear somebody else is going to be in a horror film too, huh, Micah?
I am? Really?
No.
No,
Emma Watson.
Really?
Goat Night? Is that what you said?
The Goats in Black.
According to Bloody Disgusting, I've never heard of them before. Are they
They're a
like...
horror site.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
the first time
they're
I'd heard.
reporting that Emma Watson may be up for a lead role in an upcoming horror film entitled Christie. Sorry, I couldn't find
Christie.
the title.
Just Christie.
So,
And what's interesting
It's a
about it
slasher
is that, yeah, and it takes place on a school campus. Follows a college co-ed who stays in her dorm during Thanksgiving and is terrorized by four masked assailants
Over Thanksgiving?
on the empty campus. The killers are up against far more than they bargained
that means
for.
boobies.
Well, I
Whoa.
just think the reason I kind of think it would be a good role for Emma Watson is because she is in school right now, so it's kind of like this interesting little connection. And when she's doing all the press interviews, she can be like, well, I'm in school right now, so I thought this was a great role for me. I could really get behind it and really get into the scene.
Is that your Emma Watson voice,
Are
Andrew?
you a
No,
spokesperson?
Yeah, well, I just figure that's what she'll say. I went to Brown and I'm at Oxford now, so.
Not your
Yeah.
Emma Watson voice?
I don't know that this is, that this film is in good taste or that it's a horror film, so just contemporary horror films, I'm over it. Like, if it's compared to The Strangers, but on a college campus, like, that's a messed up movie.
That's the
And
thing,
it's-
though. Compare it to what you just saw, though. Compare it to The Woman in Black, which is a real horror film, versus, just cutting people up. And I don't think they should call it horror. I think they should call it
Slasher.
slasher. Yeah, exactly.
The Woman in Black got a 63% on Rotten Tomatoes, by the way. So it's a fresh movie by Rotten Tomatoes scoring system, but obviously
I wonder how the
could
woman
have been
feels
a lot
about that. Maybe we could get her on the show.
Who?
I wonder how the Woman in Black feels about this.
Oh.
Oh, you don't want her on the show, Micah. You really, really, really don't.
I'm
Okay, well-
afraid to turn around right now.
Other
As long
There's
as you
other
don't have
Emma
any
Watson
kids,
casting news too.
it's good. As long as you don't have any kids, things are safe.
Well, apparently she is reuniting with director David Yates on a project called Your Voice in My Head.
And this is the role that David Yates said maybe a couple months ago at this point that,
He
I
had
have this
something.
great role for Emma. It'd be perfect for her. I really want to work with her again, blah, blah, blah. So this looks like the role. That'll be nice for them to work
I'm sure
together.
David
again.
is very happy with your impersonation of him.
Yes.
Apologize. Now.
No.
Treating former guests on our show. Such disrespect.
I think that's the last of
All
the
right.
news.
Yeah, that is it for the news. That is it for the news. Okay, thanks, Micah. Great job as
No
usual.
problem.
You're a new superstar. So in light of this news that we just mentioned earlier, Dan Radcliffe saying who he would like to play in a Potter film, another Potter film, or a remake, I think was the exact question he got. I was wondering, and this leads into our favorite segment, what you guys would all like to play in a Harry Potter film. I don't think we've ever really asked this question before. We've asked questions like, what's our favorite character in a Harry Potter film or in a Harry Potter book? But who would you actually want to play?
Oh, I know this.
Who, Mikey? Go ahead.
Mad-Eye Moody.
You would fit into that role. I was going to guess that or Hagrid.
See, the thing is, like, I would love to be Hagrid, but I feel like Ben kind of has always had that. And, but, I think it would be fun to be Hagrid because he's such a lovable character, but I think Mad-Eye Moody would be kind of fun because one, you can play the villain for like one movie and then you can, because it's Mad-Eye Moody, not really. And then you get to be the good guy the next movie. So I think it'd be fun. Or Shacklebolt.
I think I would like to play Severus Snape because now I would never be able to be Alan Rickman or be as good as Alan Rickman, but it seems like such a fun role to play, to be the bad but secretly good guy. And not too much work for filming either. He's not a lead, so that'd be pretty easy. So I would take the role of Snape if I had such a opportunity.
Micah?
Mike and Eric?
I'd go with Lupin.
Why Lupin?
I've always liked the character in the books. I thought there was a great role in Prisoner of Azkaban. He's kind of really the key to Harry's past, like the first real insight he gets into Harry's past, and he's the one who really instills in him defense against the dark arts, and sort of begins him on that path. I don't know. That's just my reasoning. I guess Aberforth would be the ideal choice, right? Considering past episodes of the show, but
wow,
no, definitely go with Lupin.
I was going to say Sirius, but I think I'm going to go with instead young Tom Riddle, like last couple of years of Hogwarts into first couple of years post Hogwarts. The transition into Lord Voldemort, that sort of thing, because it's a very dark role, but it's also very, I don't know, it just seems like it would be interesting. I think if they remade the films, one of the reasons for them to remake the films is to spend a lot more time on the backstory. And they could really make completely different movies if they focused on, just different things that the first films didn't. So I think there would be more memories, about Hepzibah Smith and about Murrow be gone, falling in love with Tom Riddle and all that stuff. So I would vouch for that role.
By the way, my second choice, Professor Trelawney.
Why don't you play both? You could give the prophecy and then hear the prophecy at the door and run to double. That'd be cool.
Okay, so our main discussion today, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, is the Oscars. This is our last episode before the Academy Awards, which are
we'll all
February
be there, right?
26th. What?
Aren't we up for an award?
MuggleCast?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to be on
commentary track.
ABC, I think, hosted by Billy Crystal. And we discussed the Potter nominations a few weeks ago. We had, they were announced January 24th, which was basically a month before the awards themselves. And Potter got 4 technical nominations, and I'll refresh your memory in case you forgot. They were not, Deathly Hallows Part 2 was nominated for Best Art Direction, Best Visual Effects, Best Makeup. Oh no, 3, not 4.
That's why I'm like,
Okay,
wait, where's the 4th one? Maybe I missed it.
Picture.
Yay!
Not Best Picture.
Yeah.
So we're not just going to talk about those 3 because we've talked about that before, but we have a few questions, and the discussion is based on this email from a reader, Hunter19 of Rock Spring, Georgia, and the subject line is why Deathly Hallows Part 2 was ignored by the Oscars. He wrote, "Hey MuggleCasters, with the release of this year's Oscar nominations, I'm sure you all will be discussing how and why Harry Potter was effectively ignored. As something of a film buff, I've so far been quite dissatisfied with the range of opinions that I've encouraged on MuggleNet in regard to this subject."
I think you meant
encountered.
What did I say?
Encouraged.
Oh, I can't read today. Apparently, I've screwed up 3 times already. "Many fans seem to feel that Harry Potter was robbed of recognition that it rightfully deserved. Personally, I believe that a realistic approach is the best way to get to the bottom of this, and that the aforementioned fans simply aren't being honest with themselves. I'd argue that Deathly Hallows Part 2 never really stood a chance to be nominated in any of the Oscar categories that fans were hoping it would be. It's unfair for people to keep comparing these films to Lord of the Rings and saying, but Return of the King won Best Picture, because those films are the very definition of high fantasy and epic filmmaking. Hollywood has tried for decades to make Lord of the Rings, and many felt that it flat out couldn't be done. Don't get me wrong, I love the Harry Potter films as much as the next guy, but there's no denying that the Potter film series as a whole isn't as cohesive and meticulously executed as that of Lord of the Rings. I believe I've gotten slightly off topic.
So do I.
But still, all of these things are signs of quality that greatly affect the film's Oscar potential. For instance, one must ask themselves questions like, was Deathly Hallows Part 2 really the best film of the year? Really? Or, just how long was Alan Rickman actually in the movie? Barring previous performances of Snape, was his presence in Hallows Part 2 enough to leave an impact equivalent to that of, say, Heath Ledger's 2008 Oscar for Best Supporting Actor as Joker? How about to filmgoers who hadn't read the books? Keeping that in mind, one might ask, does this movie make any god-darn sense to somebody who's never picked up a Potter book? In short, yes, the 96% fresh rating that Deathly Hallows Part 2 carries on Rotten Tomatoes does signify that critics found it to be a good film, wonderful summer popcorn fare, and a fitting end to an always above-average series. But it is not, and nor has Harry Potter ever been, Oscar bait. To many of the die-hard fans like us, though, Harry Potter has been our childhood. The magic of these films and the world they brought to life is far greater than anything that an Oscar could possibly validate, and that is enough. Smiley.
Well, before we get into this, I mean, that's exactly what David Heyman said after the quote-unquote snubs, was that, you know, the fan reaction was enough validation for him, you know, because that shows that the films were appreciated by the people that they care the most about. As nice as it would be, of course, to get an Oscar in some category.
Yeah, you know, as much as I would love to say, oh no, Harry Potter really deserved it, and this is X, Y, and Z, why? You know, when you look at the nominations this year, and when you look at the nominations of Harry Potter in the past, you know, I have the Academy's website pulled up with all the nominations Harry Potter has received over all the films. You know, they got, the only one they didn't get a nomination in, let me just make sure I'm counting that right, that's 35, is Chamber of Secrets, 4, 5, and Order of the Phoenix. So there's 2 films they didn't get any nomination on. But if you look at the history of what films beat them out on, you know, they were in visual effects 1, 2, 3 times, including this year. And honestly, as much as I love the visual effects of Harry Potter Part 2, I don't think it's going to win this year. Mainly because the films they're up against this year, you know, even in, you know, art direction, where I think it has a phenomenal art direction, but every year that they've been up, they've lost against films that, honestly, Harry Potter, since the first film, the art direction has been kind of set by that film. So it's not like a groundbreaking thing. And visual effects this year, they're against Hugo, Planet of the Apes. Like, did any of you guys see that with,
Yeah.
Yeah. You know who I'm talking about. Like, it's just, oh my gosh. I know, Malfoy, what's his name? Tom Felton. Tom Felton, jeez, it's like slipping me. And even Transformers, Dark of the Moon, like all those films visually, for visual effects, you know, yes, Harry Potter had some great things this year, but nothing groundbreaking. You know, I would say probably, you know, Goblet of Fire had more groundbreaking effects, you know, just the reveal of Voldemort and no nose. That was huge visual effects wise, but it's all been done.
I know this doesn't apply to one film, but you can also argue that the Harry Potter films have been pretty groundbreaking on a whole, in that the success of them, how long the entire cast has stuck around with the entire thing. You know, that for that reason alone, I find it very groundbreaking.
I'm not saying that they don't deserve some type of special achievement or something, because it is a phenomenal series, much more so than many other film series out there.
Well, I guess I have to ask Mikey too, and I wasn't gonna think about talking about this, but you know, the year that Lord of the Rings swept and had, was it 11 Academy Awards? I mean, those are the Oscars, and Return of the King got them all that year.
Well, you know, here's the thing is, I actually pulled up Return of the King, and it's, let me find it real quick. But like, just to see like what it was against and what it earned, like,
that's what I'm asking.
You know, so, alright, so Actually, no, that's not true. Return of the King won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11, you're right. Andrew cut out my counting, okay? But like, all right, so best picture.
Why? Is it, your counting sounded fine. It was accurate.
I was. I just want to make sure. All right, so for best picture, and I actually saw every single film in best picture in 2003 when Return of the King were on. It was Return of the King, Lost in Translation. Don't get me wrong, I love Lost in Translation. It's sitting, actually, I see it on the shelf. It's the silver box right over there.
That's Sofia Coppola, right?
Yeah, exactly. Master and Commander, that was interesting. I wasn't, a huge fan of it. I went with see with my dad. Mystic River, I like Clint Eastwood, but, it wasn't, I personally thought as a picture as a whole, the epicness that was Return of the King totally beat out Mystic River. And Seabiscuit. I really enjoyed Seabiscuit. I live in Kentucky now. And so it's one of those things where, yes, I think it was great that it was nominated, but personally, out of that series of films, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King was a much more epic, well-rounded, best picture, film. Does that make, like, compared to, like, what do you guys think about that? Lord of the Rings versus what Harry Potter would be up to against this year? And really take Deathly Hallows. Personally, I feel Deathly Hallows Part 2, I never was on the show to kind of talk about it. I enjoyed it. I loved it. It was great. It was a great ending to the series. But it kind of felt like the third, Pirates of the Caribbean, where it was all action and kind of just it was just the climax of the series. If part 1 and 2 were one film, the epicness of that long film with all that stuff in there, I think it would have been better. But the fact they broke it up into 2 pieces, taking individual piece.
You mean like if it were one 5-hour film?
Yeah. Or even,
It's an interesting take. But I mean, to answer your question about comparing it to the other films that are nominated this year, I haven't seen enough of these to give you a solid answer, but I think what you're saying about it being the climax lends to the fact that it does deserve a best picture because a best picture, story is obviously so important. And for this film to wrap up this story, this 7-part story, 8-part story.
But you're looking at an 8-part story. No, each picture for best picture has to be taken as an individual film.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying that Deathly Hallows Part 2 is wrapping up this entire story. Mm-hmm. And you do understand everything going into this film and coming out of it. At least I think.
I think our reader here would disagree. Hunter.
Yeah, but then look at the reviews of the film. I mean, why did it get such good reviews? Just because there was a lot of action?
No, because it's Harry Potter. It was a phenomenal film.
But it hasn't gotten this kind of review before.
It's
a Potter film.
I'll tell you this. Like, I love Harry Potter. I don't want anyone to say, "Oh, Mikey doesn't like it." I really do. I feel like I'm just gonna get bashed for.
No, we believe.
I feel like
Mikey, he likes it.
I do like it. I got Fox tattooed on my leg. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. Yes, but it's one of those things where, as a picture in whole, like best picture, like honestly, I think The Help was probably one of my favorite films this year. Even more so than Harry Potter, because it's just a really heartfelt, touching story, and the visuals were beautiful in it. Best Picture has a lot of things. It's not just story.
Okay. So let's step a step. Let's put Best Picture to the side for a second.
All right. Let's talk.
And let's talk about Best Supporting Actor for Severus Snape. And Hunter, in his email, Hunter writes, was Snape, barring the previous performances of Snape, was his presence in Hallows Part 2 enough to leave an impact equivalent of Heath Ledger's award-winning Joker? So
that's a good point.
That was what Hunter said, and I actually wanted to bring up one of the readers to MuggleNet sent in a long explanation for following the Oscars snub, where he actually detailed, his name is Stuart, and he wrote in and he said that actually the 4-year consideration campaign that Warner Brothers launched promoted 8 candidates for Best Supporting Actor that they wanted the Academy to take a look at for that role. So they equally promoted, Warner Brothers apparently equally promoted Robbie Coltrane, Ralph Fiennes, Michael Gambon, John Hurt, Matthew Lewis, Gary Oldman, David Thewlis, and Alan Rickman. So I don't know exactly how this works, but essentially it means that they didn't get fully behind Alan Rickman for supporting actor. They just threw this whole list of their, best British actors at the Academy to review, and then it was the Academy's job to kind of review, okay, does this actor qualify for the best supporting actor not to achieve the nomination. Now, I didn't know that. I thought this was great, some great insight. But it means that basically Warner Brothers is at least partially responsible for either confusing the Academy or just trying too hard and not really acting in its own best interests. You know, because if you're talking about some of those actors, Robbie Coltrane, even Michael Gambon in the film for 30 seconds, you know, whereas Snape actually has a character arc in the film, you know, and so Alan Rickman's performance, you know, should have been the focus there by Warner Brothers to get that nomination.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was going to bring up what Stuart said too, because it's interesting that the attention was not focused solely on one individual. Had it been focused on Alan Rickman, maybe there is a better chance that he would have been nominated in that field. But
you know, I read somewhere recently, and I can't find the article, and it was nothing related to Harry Potter or anything. It was just how Oscars are actually nominated and how there's a laundry list of people and how they get it down to the actual nominations and what the rules are. I'm trying to find the article on it, but basically I'm sure Snape was a character and Alan Rickman was on that list, just like Warner Brothers pushed him. But what happened was there's just not enough push behind that one character. And when you have Warner Brothers pushing for everybody, you know, it's like they split their vote, kind of like you know, the what was the Teen Choice Awards when a bunch of actors were up and all the Harry Potter actors were up for it, and all 4 of them lost. Why? It's because they split the vote between who's your favorite Harry Potter actor. Well, guess what? The person who was not a Harry Potter actor won. Why? Because all her fans voted for her. So it's one of those things where, you know, it's as much politics for some of this stuff as it is when you look at it. But it for the most part, you know, no system is ever perfect. And yes, Best Supporting Actor, Snape's story arc in the book was phenomenal. And in the movie, it came out really, really well, but it wasn't, I don't feel it was enough to be a Best Supporting, because he didn't have enough screen time to be that character. And I think it showed with Warner Brothers pushing so many characters, you know, or so many actors as supporting.
It was almost like they were grasping at straws.
Yeah, they were grasping because like, look at, you know, why would you do Michael Gambon as supporting actor in this film?
Yeah.
Why? It doesn't make sense.
He's got one scene. Yeah, exactly.
But it doesn't make any sense. I think they shot themselves in the foot a little bit with that.
Yeah, and it's not, you know, it's just...
Could it be that is another thing to consider, that these people who are nominating actors have to pick only one. So you have to consider, are all these people who are in the industry, do they look at Harry Potter and say, that is my favorite film, so I have to nominate this year Harry Potter in these various categories? I mean, that could have hurt it too, because if the nominations work where the voters only get to select one in each category, I mean, they have to pick Potter as number one. That's very difficult to do.
Well, but the thing is, it was the most popular film of 2011. It was the most successful film of 2011. Is it that hard to say that it should have been nominated? I mean, this goes to my question: is, are the people who are, you know, in charge of the nomination process out of touch with the public? Because this is the highest grossing film franchise of all time. Clearly, the people who are going to see the films and the people who are nominating the films have a very vast difference of opinion on what's a good film.
Well, it's like Avatar was nominated for Best Picture, right? Last year, wasn't it? And it lost to The Hurt Locker. Was that last year or the year before?
It was nominated. Let me find it real quick.
Yeah, but
I think it was 2 years ago.
The same thing is that Avatar was the highest grossing film, or, you know, grossed millions and trillions of dollars. You know, it was this huge successful film, and it got nominated for Best Picture. The story was not original. The story was very bland.
Yeah. Now
the effects were great. The effects were great.
Now on Avatar, you know, again, they look at a lot of things for Best Picture, even though, and again, you got to remember, it's not just story is what they're doing. They look at everything, and Avatar, more so than this Harry Potter, did have some amazing, groundbreaking things in it.
I do agree with you.
Mainly the 3D. And, you know, a perfect example, if everyone wants to go back to Lord of the Rings or even Avatar and the groundbreakingness, look at the new Hobbit stuff that's coming out. I can tell you the technology that's going behind it. Peter Jackson bought a ridiculous amount of red digital cinema cameras, and he's shooting at a faster frame rate than what Hollywood does now. He's shooting in pure 3D, which a lot of the films that are in 3D are just post-conversion. Like, he is doing something in Hobbit that has not been done before. Avatar is the closest thing to it, but he's going so far beyond what Avatar did. Like, I can tell you, Hobbit is going to win a visual effects award for the Oscars when it comes out.
So that's the thing, is that Potter did get nominated, but all for technical awards.
Yeah, and Best Picture.
But when it comes to things like Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, when it comes to any of the meat and potatoes of the films,
the story,
Harry Potter got snubbed.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah,
because
arguably it has to do with the story, and I think that this is another question I want to raise. Are book-to-film adaptations kind of just cursed in this regard?
No.
I mean, there have been some, but and I'm talking book-to-film adaptations, and also this kind of
we've been talking about Lord of the Rings. We've been talking about Lord of the Rings. Come on.
No, but if you look at Harry Potter, I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, Harry Potter is probably a little too mainstream." The critics tend to ignore it. They just see it as, "Oh, people love it just because people love it."
Well, Deathly Hallows 2 was the film where everybody came together, even critics, and said that was good. There's that. But the other thing I would argue is that there are actually a ton of, nothing really is original, like truly, truly original. No movie now, that hits theaters isn't based on a book or, another work. And that truth is scary.
I mean, because I wouldn't say almost all of them. That's a little bit of a stretch.
It's very difficult. I really would, if you could name some. I mean,
I would just come to mind like Pixar films. Like, those are all.
They only make one of those every couple of years.
Yeah,
right?
I know, but it's still not.
Pixar's got the billions of dollars to make it happen. But in other words, I think that the studios, it's very hard to get a film greenlit these days that is original, as opposed to based off, like Water for Elephants, based off of a book with a built-in audience attached to it. It just
and
seems
people
like,
know it can work.
Yeah,
I really liked the Water for Elephants film.
Well, I just want to say this though. You're talking about taking the most successful book series of our time and turning it into the most successful film franchise of all time. So how do you not award David Heyman, who's been there from the beginning as a producer? How do you not award David Barron, who's been there from the beginning as a producer? How do you not award Steve Kloves, who has done all films except Order of the Phoenix? That's what bothers me.
Well, is the BAFTA enough then? The British
maybe
film institution saying lifetime.
But the fact that they're not even recognized. I mean, how many times, Mikey, when they were nominated, was it for, I don't know, is their best producer aside from best director? I don't know if that's an actual award, but
they do special achievement awards. And here's the thing is, I don't want to get into it.
I was going to say, was Steve Kloves ever nominated for an award for for his screenplay?
Yeah, give me a second. I'll look it up.
Sorry, I didn't mean it. That's what I look at, because those are people who have been there. Aside from the actors, if you're going to say the acting wasn't great throughout, with the exception of Alan Rickman in the final film, okay, we could have that debate. But these guys have been there since the very inception of the film and have brought it to life over 10 years. How do you not acknowledge that?
Yeah.
Well, the Oscars are year to year. I mean, that's the thing about the...
Then you give them an achievement award. I mean, you give them something that recognizes the work that they've done.
No, and that's what I've been saying is, like, as an individual one, like right now I have like 40 tabs open with everything, so I don't want to misquote any facts or anything. But really, if you look back at what Harry Potter has had nomination-wise, and again, you have to look at it as an individual film. When you look at it, they've gone up against films that were really, at their time, actually, I felt a little bit better. Like a perfect example is, for cinematography in 2009, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. You know what it lost to? Avatar. Like, how can it compare to that? Like seriously, look at what James Cameron did with that film.
And it was a lot more colorful than the sixth Harry Potter movie.
Yeah, and that's just one example. When you look at Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, which is arguably one of my favorite Potter films still. It's, I thought it was wonderfully shot. It was big and epic. It was, it was the Triwizard Tournament, all these great things. It lost to Memoirs of a Geisha. It's, again, which was beautiful, that's an art direction. That was very, very specific thing. So a lot of times
also based on a book.
I know. When you look at Harry Potter, Deathly Hallows Part 1 for visual effects, what did it lose to? Inception. Yes, it was a phenomenal film in the sense of effects, but have you seen Inception? The stuff that, I know you guys have. So it's one of those things where it's been pitted against some really good films. And when you look at, what it's up against this year, I really want to bring it back to what it's up against this year. A perfect example is Makeup that it's up against. It's up against 2 other films, and I will admit I haven't seen it. But honestly, looking at what the films are and doing a little research, it's up against Albert Nobbs and The Iron Lady. Well, The Iron Lady is, what's her name? Meryl Streep. As Margaret Thatcher. Haven't got a chance to see it, so I can't say anything on that part. But Albert Nobbs is Glenn Close plays dude, passing as a dude. And you know who else won an Oscar for that? Mrs. Doubtfire. Mrs. Doubtfire won when Robin Williams played a woman. Okay, so honestly, for makeup, is Harry Potter gonna beat that? It's been up against really good films in these categories.
Are you saying Glenn Close as a man is more shocking or unbelievable than Warwick Davis as a goblin?
Oh,
I'm not saying unbelievable. I'm saying
here's the thing, though. I mean, how could you? I'm not disagreeing with you, Mikey, but I'm saying how could these people not vote for Harry Potter when you look at the entire film is extreme amounts of great makeup work?
No, I agree with you, and it's just one of those things where I think it has, like I said, it's a lot of politics too. And I think the question is makeup adding to the story. That's important. Yeah, and I think and you got to remember, again, I've never seen the other films, so I can't say how well it adds to the story or different things. But again, the whole thing revolves around makeup changing, the character. So it's one of those things where I will say, I think Harry Potter has done some phenomenal stuff, and I think it should receive some type of special award for being this franchise by actually making all the films. That's a huge achievement, and I have every single one of the movies myself. It's one of those things where it's definitely done a lot, but when it comes to Oscars, it's been up against some really good stuff, and it's hard to say that it got snubbed. It's just bad luck, it really is.
Are the Academy voters, now I know Mikey's answered this, so Micah, I ask you, are the Academy voters out of touch with the public and what moviegoers are actually going to see?
Yeah, I mean, I brought this up a little bit before. I think that they are, but I think I also have a slight bias towards the Potter films, and I think that they deserve to be recognized in some capacity, but I just don't understand how, again, we talked about the fact that Potter was the most successful film of 2011. It has been nominated for 3 Oscars, so, okay, I mean, is that just due, though? I mean, is that enough? And knowing that there's probably not a good chance of them winning any of those 3, Mikey just, pointed out the facts of what they're up against. And I don't know, I just think that, but it's hard because what would have happened, let's say Alan Rickman gets nominated for Best Supporting Actor, let's say Deathly Hallows Part 2 is nominated for Best Picture. Would that have been enough, even if they didn't win? I mean, it's almost like you have to take a look at the entire series, and that's why I really feel that a award acknowledging the series as a whole would be more fitting.
I agree with you. An award and not nominating, showing the whole series. Sadly, there's not an award for best series, or
best 8-film saga.
Yeah.
What would be the competition then?
Star Wars.
James Bond.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
No, not 8 films. I'm saying 8 films. Star Wars is only 6, and if you count the special editions, it's 9. So the award would have to be, or 10 now.
We forgot about Clone Wars. And
that was not released in theaters, was it?
Yes, it was. I went to see it. I dressed up.
About that. Okay, and then
episode 1 in 3D. That's a different film.
Yes. Have
Mikey,
you seen it yet?
You play.
You want to go up against me with Star Wars?
Have you
No,
seen
we
it?
don't need to get
Have
into
you
this.
seen
Nobody
episode
needs to
1 in
hear
3D
this.
yet, Mikey?
I'm actually going on Tuesday. Anyone in
Guess what? I was there Thursday at midnight. Thank you so much.
Sounds like Eric's a bigger fan.
Eric, I was out of town on Thursday. I was working.
No, okay, that's fine. I don't need to know
sorry.
what you're doing.
Well, the good news is that Star Wars plays everywhere, Mikey, not just in your town.
I know. actually, no. Where I was at in Kentucky on Thursday night, it was not playing.
And I'm just
So I
messing
was
with
in
you.
a small, like I said, I was all the way on the eastern side of Kentucky, really small area. So, okay.
Okay, well, we're nearing the end of the discussion here. I think one thing we can kind of wrap up on is just final predictions. Will Deathly Hallows Part 2 get anything at the Oscars in 2 weeks?
I think Mikey makes a good point. It's up against a lot of, tough.
Great stuff.
Well, I think, looking again at the BAFTAs, there have been, I think it received most recently, outstanding contribution to British cinema. And that was an award that was presented to the producers and was shared among the entire cast. That's a great thing. And a great award. And I don't know that the Oscars are the right venue for any kind of award like that. As much as we'd love to see it. I mean, I'm a little shocked. I just, at least having some of the Potter cast as, to be present at the Oscars. I mean, do we know if any of them are even going to be at the Oscars? I mean, not necessarily even to accept an award, but you don't have to have an award to attend the Oscars, do you? To be
I think
nominated
they still
for
invite
something?
people. I think they invite people.
I
though.
feel like
it's not just sort of like a.
seeing the cast as like a presenter, in the past or in the future, would really do well, I think, to alleviate some of the anxiety that I have about this whole thing.
Talking about them winning, I think if they're going to win one of them, like, I really don't think they're going to win makeup. I don't think they're going to win visual effects. I do feel that the strongest chance they have is art direction. And mainly because this is the first time we've seen Hogwarts completely destroyed. That's a completely different art direction than all the previous films. So
It's the opposite art direction, one might say.
well, but you got to remember, like, every time it was up for art direction before, it's like it was all kind of based on the first film. Like, they couldn't really do too much. This one, they were able to break from it. They were at war, and war itself is really hard to do. So I think, compare what it's up against.
You say that could put them in contention for visual effects too? Because I mean, you look at everything that went on there. The Dementors, the statues coming to life, the giants.
Hogwarts on fire, simple.
Honestly,
the dragon. Don't forget
Guys,
about the dragon.
There were giants.
Harry and Voldemort's fight.
There were giants in Deathly Hallows Part 2.
I'll tell you this. Hugo and Planet of the Apes. Don't get me wrong, I think Transformers did an amazing visual effects. I saw it, and I've looked at ILM's VFX reel for this, and it's actually making the huge Twitter rounds because it's really amazing. But I think Planet of the Apes and Hugo visually kind of outdo Harry Potter. Just because Planet of the Apes, like, bringing Caesar to life, bringing the guy who played Gollum to life.
Andy Serkis.
There it is. I can never remember his name. But bringing him to life and seeing the emotion in the ape, and at the very end where he just says no, like, that is just like, it's the visual effects
there
to bring that
Mikey.
character
You
alive.
spoiled the film for everybody.
I'm sorry. It's the Planet of the Apes. If you've never seen it, then, it's an old series. It's been around. But the fact that was in, that was in there, it was visually beautiful. Like, I forgot that this was not a real ape the whole time. I forgot. So, and that's the thing, is visual effects are not about, Avada Kedavra, and you see the green light,
Right.
Yes, that looks cool. But, when you look at it, the best visual effects are the effects that you don't realize are visual effects. Because that's hard to sell. Like, like, trying to make something look real. Like, I love Star Wars, but look at the original Phantom Menace, not the original, but Phantom Menace, and look at Jar Jar Binks. Look at it now. How dated does that character look?
Yeah, I mean, all CG has increased tremendously.
Yeah,
now.
but the point is, like, if you can do visual effects and make it not look CG, like, even then, you can tell Jar Jar Binks he was an alien on purpose because they couldn't do hair texture on him.
And I bet you a lot of critics will agree with you on that. We should not even realize the special effects are here. Everything should appear real, like we've been drawn into the story.
That does make it a little bit more special. I mean, I guess Mikey's right. They gave the ape more emotions than James Franco had in that whole film.
Yeah,
so.
and that's my point. Is like the visual effects category for Harry Potter. If it wins, I will be stoked because I love Harry Potter. But seriously, I don't think it has a chance. I think the best chance it has is art direction to win something. And I would love for Harry Potter, out of all the films, to at least win one Oscar, because I think it would almost validate me loving the series as much as I do. I want Harry Potter to win for me. It's one of those things, like, not just for the people who made it and how awesome we got 8 movies out of this series, but the fact that it would validate that, yes, it's an Oscar-worthy franchise.
But
Micah, do you think any of these have a chance?
I mean, I defer to Mikey because he probably knows better than I do. But no, it's true. I mean, this is like he lives and breathes this stuff. So I mean, I would think though, if you ever saw the piece, what was it, the Goblins of Gringotts on the Blu-ray. I mean, there was a ton of work that was put into creating these guys and gals. In the bank, and I guess that's part of the reason why they were nominated. Let's leave the epilogue out of the discussion because I don't think that helps them at all in that category. But
well, that's
I don't know. That's makeup. Like I said, I'll defer to Mikey. Maybe art direction is where they have their best shot. I just think though that it's so, to me, at the end of the day, it looks so poor that either this series, it has a chance to walk away, let's say right now, with 3, right? Okay. But the reality is it probably only has a chance of walking away with 1, and that this series may have only 1 or 0 Oscars after everything that it's done.
Has happened.
So that's my take. I think that they should, if they're not doing it this year, which they're probably not, next year they owe it to this series, because let's face it, this series has also contributed significantly to the industry when it has suffered tremendously over the last several years.
That's a good point.
In terms of what it's meant to the box office.
And that's not to say that they won't give a Academy Honorary Award to the series.
That's what I think.
Wouldn't they have announced that by now?
Well, maybe next year. I mean, I think, though, that they should do it the right way. Like the BAFTAs did it. Bring back all the directors, bring back the producers, bring back the cast, however many you can, cool. and do the right thing.
And I really do think the film industry does have to thank the Harry Potter franchise because it has done so much for it in this time when movies just don't do well at the box office. There are films like the Harry Potters and the Twilights and soon the Hunger Games and, all these, James Bond, Transformers. There's all these franchises that just do extraordinarily well. And we should appreciate them, darn it.
No, I agree. And I would love for them to get that kind of validation of a special achievement award or something. It's something because, like, honestly, it is an amazing work to get all 8 films done. And it could be this, you brought up the thing about a book translation to a movie. It could be one of those things where the book translation to a movie happened too soon before the full impact of the series was felt. It's one of those things where we didn't even know what the end of the series was going to be while the movie started. So it could be something along that line, for an achievement that maybe the book series did translate to a film too soon. I don't know. But I would like them to get something.
The one thing I will say is that I was surprised about was that the score wasn't nominated at all.
Yeah, it should have. It really should have. Eric, do you have any final thoughts on this?
Go Big Red.
You get the last word.
Go Big Red.
What's that mean?
I don't know. Go Harry Potter.
Cornell.
Okay.
There it is.
What?
Well, all will be revealed soon, and I'm sure Harry Potter fans will have a lot to say about it no matter what happens. To wrap up the show today, we have a couple emails. This first one is from Sabrina, 22, Rostock, Germany. Hey, MuggleCast, I'm Sabrina from Germany, and 2011 has been a very special year for me because I started listening to MuggleCast. Oh, how nice. You guys are awesome, and I love listening to your show on my way to university. While watching Deathly Hallows Part 2 on Christmas Eve, it was a Christmas present. In Germany, we get our presents on Christmas Eve. I was wondering why there was so much snow in the Hogsmeade scene. The trio enters Hogsmeade, and there's snow everywhere. The weird things are, it may snow if it is May. It is May. So why would there be snow at that time of the year? And there's no snow in Hogwarts or in any other scene in the movie. I started thinking about the other Hogsmeade scenes in the other movies and realized that there's always snow. We talked about this recently, actually.
On the last episode, somebody wrote in and said that there was an answer, but I don't think it was answered.
Well, no, I have two answers. It's either one or the other. A, Hogsmeade is at a higher physical elevation than Hogwarts, so there's going to be more snow.
Right.
Or B, there's a theme park with Hogsmeade with a lot of snow in it, and they want to connect the two. And I'm serious. They want to connect the two so that when you go to Hogsmeade in the theme park, you see the snow just like you did in the film, and vice versa.
So, question. It's been a while since I read Deathly Hallows, and I remember seeing this. Were there Dementors in the area in Hogsmeade?
No. There were Death Eaters.
Okay, so no Death Eaters. So no Dementors. Because I'm like, Dementors, they'd make it, we saw them in this third film where they go by and things turn to frost.
That's true.
I apologize. Actually, I put the wrong email in here. I wanted to put in a response because this email was on our last show. And people wrote in to respond to this email, basically saying, Andrew, what you pointed out. And I think they quoted J.K. Rowling, or I think it was somebody from the movies saying that Hogsmeade is at a higher elevation. And that's why it always snows there.
I mean, they're in England, so, there's a lot of precipitation, too. So if you're higher up and it's going to rain, then it's going to turn to snow. Simple. And the theme park thing.
Oh, I like a Dementor flies by and turns the whole thing to snow.
I like that. That was a great visual effect, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's like
not Oscar worthy apparently, but it's a great special.
And the second email is from Angela 22 of Levittown, PA. I've been there quite a lot. On book mirror versus movie mirror. I'm not sure who else to vent to about this, so here goes. In the books, the small sliver of mirror that Harry has left was part of his own mirror that Sirius gave him. Sirius had another mirror. They supposedly could communicate through the two mirrors. The rest of Harry's is smashed in his trunk. Sirius's mirror should be whole when it's sold to Aberforth by Mundungus. In the movie, Harry's small piece of mirror matches with a piece missing from the mirror sold to Aberforth like a puzzle. Makes no sense. Well, the mirror he's looking at, Aberforth's mirror, is the one that's on the wall that Aberforth always looks through. So, I mean, that's the movie explanation.
Yeah,
because remember, he never gives him the mirror in the movies. In the book, he gives him the mirror. Sirius gives Harry the mirror.
And it also has a big backstory related to Sirius and James Potter. That's the thing, is they didn't go into a lot of that backstory in these films. So,
So the explanation of there being only one mirror, and
it's easier to tie
both ways. Yeah, it's easier to tie in, and also because there is a line that made it into the films when they're talking about the Vanishing Covenant, and Dumbledore asks Harry, "I suspect there are a pair somewhere, Tom." But it's not explained, and so we know that two mirrors that are somehow a pair that you could communicate through them, that James and Sirius did when they were kids, that kind of thing. But I guess visually, they were able to explain it visually by Harry matching up his piece of the mirror with the rest of the mirror. You got the sense that made them magical, because it was from the same mirror they could use to communicate. That was just really well communicated, I think, just visually. They didn't need to spend any time explaining it, but it kind of made sense. Oh, that's why Harry could see Aberforth, was because Aberforth was looking into the mirror, and that was still part of the mirror.
Now, how did Harry get that sliver of mirror? Do we know?
He just pulls it out.
Yeah. So my point going back to the Oscar thing is that's what Hunter says. He's like, do the movies even make sense for us that haven't read the books? There's lots of little things like that is there because of how it was in the book, but they have had to try and tell a story.
Exactly. I was going to say, let's not forget how many episodes do we sit here and shred the movies apart because of things they left out.
Yeah.
And I like the movies,
but I mean, I think their goal in leaving things out was to make each movie stand on its own, though. I mean, do you disagree?
No, I agree.
But then that's obviously flawed, because I'm thinking, these films didn't really make sense to anybody who hadn't read the books. So if that's the feeling, then really they failed on both accounts, right? I mean, if these films are being penalized because they don't make sense if you haven't read the books, then they're not standalones, and they're being penalized because they're only one part of the 8 films. Is that why Harry Potter hasn't won an Oscar so far? Is because, this is only the 4th movie. There's going to be 4 more. We can't give it an Oscar. Or what?
No.
What exactly is the case here?
No, I think it's I'll tell you this. I watched all the Harry Potter films leading up to the release of Deathly Hallows Part 2 with 3 people who had never seen any of the films and who had never read the books and had no intention, no how much I tried, they were not going to read it, but they were willing to watch all the films with me before the movie came out. I literally had to pause halfway through, starting at Prisoner of Azkaban. Only the first 2 were they able to follow along on their own, but starting from Prisoner of Azkaban, I had to pause and explain certain aspects that were not in the movie, so they can follow along and understand it. So, and this is, and that's just the way these movies were made because...
Yeah, that's what we've always had to deal with, unfortunately.
Yeah. But again, when you look at, Return of the King, that one, it translated really well from the book to the movie. But again, it also had 3.5 hours.
I still get Gondor and Rohan mixed up. I'm sorry. I don't know who that... And what's with the Dead Army? I don't get it. It's... and who is he the king of? The Return of the King?
You know what's something that's not dead, though? The MuggleCast website.
Ayo.
Over at MuggleCast.com, you can get all the information you need about the show. You can also write in to ask Eric and Mikey any burning questions you have about Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, or other films.
I know.
that don't connect to this podcast.
I didn't even talk about Star Wars on this episode, so stop.
No, you did.
It didn't.
Just enough.
All right.
It was just right. You can also, I think we're just about caught up on transcripts. Yeah, we are caught up on transcripts.
Yeah, we're about there. There's a couple missing here and there, but everybody...
The most recent ones are all there.
Yeah, all the most recent episodes are there. Tracy has done a great job leading the transcript team, and, they do a great job. There's nothing else to say, but I know it's not easy work. That's how I started out. So we tip our hat to them because... we really appreciate it, and all the listeners who, can't download the show or are hearing impaired, or English is not their first language and they can translate it, they really appreciate the transcripts. So great job.
Mm-hmm. Also, a couple plugs, all the MuggleCast outlets. We have the iTunes page where you can subscribe and review us. We have our Twitter, which is twitter.com/MuggleCast. We have Facebook, which is facebook.com/MuggleCast. Our fan Tumblr is mugglecast.tumblr.com. And also a plug for another podcast none of us are on, but I realized I don't think I've really plugged this yet. It's called Glee Chat. And it's a podcast over on Hypable. And I know some of you guys, quite a few of you, are Glee fans.
I am.
Are
you,
Mikey?
Dude, I watch every everything.
What aren't you a fan
I know, that's true.
That's a better question.
That's true. I'm a big fanboy for everything, huh?
So just head over to the iTunes store and do a search for Glee Chat. They do a great job with that show, and they do an episode, just like the Game of Thrones show that we talked about on the last episode. After each new episode of Glee, they recorded a new episode of the podcast.
I was going to say, they recorded, after every podcast for Glee, they record one for Game of Thrones, but
interesting dynamic. They're so alike, they can actually record them back to back.
Yeah, and I actually am going to be on a Glee Chat episode coming up because I was recently a convert to Glee, so I have to admit I was brought over to the bright side,
to the Glee side.
The Glee side.
Yeah.
And speaking of Game of Thrones, we're recording our first show very soon, so keep an eye out. We'll promote it through the MuggleCast website, Twitter.
I have a good feeling about that one. That's going to be very good, I think.
I agree.
All the hosts and the content, all that.
It's a good show. It's a good show,
I think.
So, Andrew,
all right, guys. What?
We're approaching a landmark episode.
What?
Next month, episode 250, and we don't want to get everybody's hopes up too much just yet. And don't start getting ideas. We don't want people making guesses and getting their hopes up and then being let down. But we are trying to get a important person related to the Harry Potter films onto the next episode.
Jamie?
To mark.
Jamie?
No.
Jamie Lawrence. Jamie Lawrence?
No. To mark the 250th episode, it is a landmark episode. We are working to get somebody on for an interview. It would be a pretty special interview.
And it's not somebody who's been on the show before. We can say that.
And it's not J.K. Rowling. Let's just get
Well, you said films. I mean, she's been important to the films, but
I want to remind everybody.
Plus, I have a feeling that pen and paper are her priority at the moment.
That's true.
Wait, what?
That's true.
I've never heard this news before.
You got it. It's the most fascinating news ever. She tweeted Mikey not once but like 8 times.
Wow.
So
wow.
Yeah,
I stopped following her on Twitter.
Did you?
I kind of did too
Mike,
a long
Mike
time
is
ago.
just like, when she says something that's not that, just let me know.
Yeah,
I'll follow her.
usually
again.
when she says something, it gets picked up by websites.
People will retweet it.
newspapers and things like that. So,
So lots to look forward to, and if maybe we'll announce it beforehand if we do get it confirmed.
We'll probably
it's not
source
100%
questions,
confirmed
right,
yet, so.
from the audience prior.
Yeah,
to...
definitely. We'll definitely do that.
the
Good
person
questions.
might have red hair. I don't know.
Oh, you really want to drop
And a
that? Well, I guess
hand-me-down
that narrows
robe?
it down to like 30 people.
Does he have a hand-me-down robe as well, Micah?
All right, so
Possibly.
so is it a he now? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, gosh.
Maybe.
Too many.
Oh,
Enough.
God. I'm not going to go anywhere near that. You guys say it.
All right, guys. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Andrew Sims.
I'm Eric Skull.
I'm Mike Tenenbaum.
And I'm Mikey B.
We'll see you next time for episode 250 with maybe a redhead. Goodbye.
Bye.
I could
Bye.
I could dye my hair red. That would get us out of the